Attorneys Association has designated it as a model for DA's offices around the country, and the United States Department of Justice has characterized it and actually designated it as a model for innovation for law enforcement in the United States. And so that brings me to one of the many, but one of the main reasons that I'm running to become the next Attorney General of California. In California, on an annual basis, we release 120,000 prisoners because they have served their time. Within 3 years of their release, 70% reoffend. It's called recidivism. 70% recidivate. It's the highest recidivism rate in the country. And what I would suggest to you is what I think is obvious. Any system with a 7 out of 10 failure rate is begging for a new plan. Plus, it is extremely expensive in terms of what it is costing a state that is on the verge of bankruptcy, and in terms of what it is costing our public safety. I believe and know that the next Attorney General of the state of California can be a leader in ensuring that we tackle this expensive issue and do something that has proven to work, which is focus on this issue of reentry. I'm running to become the next Attorney General for the state of California because, as we have discussed, and Pedro and I did a press conference today, the issue of the environment is a very important one. And there must be leadership that builds on the leadership Jerry Brown has provided on that very issue. Builds on the work that has to be done in recognizing California has and must be a leader on the issue of ensuring that we take seriously crimes against our environment, that we treat them as imminent a threat to our health and safety as any other crimes we can imagine. And so how does that look when we do the work? Well, it is the work of advocacy to say things like this ridiculous proposition that was funded by Texas oil companies may not and should not be passed. And it is also about doing the work in the way that I think of the work of Abraham Lincoln. Remember his circuit rider approach? He would just gallop around different towns, take a show on the road. Well, the resources of the Attorney General, when well cultivated, should be used the same way to give assistance to those counties that need the infrastructure and the skill set to deal with these crimes that are including hazardous and waste disposal and inappropriate disposal, that include pollution of our air and our water. Because remember something, folks, we've got 58 counties in the state of California. And most of them are not San Francisco or LA or Santa Barbara. They're Yolo and Calusa. They're places that are geographically very large, where there's a lot of air and tree and water there. And they need the assistance that the Attorney General can give. I'm also running to become Attorney General for the state of California because I do believe it is she, the Attorney General of the state of California, that can make very clear the direct connection between public safety and public education. So here's what I'm talking about. I did an assessment in San Francisco of who our homicide victims are, who are under the age of 25 when they were killed. Got the data back, and it included the fact that 94% of them are high school dropouts. So then I went over to the school district and I asked the superintendent, what's going on? And she said, well, Kamala, of the few number of children we have in the public school system in San Francisco, 5,500 have been designated as habitually and chronically truant. And of the 5,500, 2,400 are elementary school students. So I asked the superintendent if she would be so kind as to convene a meeting, which she did, with me and all of the principals and administrators of the Unified School District. And I stood before them in a local high school auditorium and I shared with them a fact about myself. I am a product of California Public Schools. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I shared with them. I decided I'm going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Now, I don't know how much y'all know about San Francisco politics, but this is a little controversial. And because you are political people, you will appreciate my staff went bananas because it was right before we knew if I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race. And they were like, can't you wait? Can't you wait? And I was like, no, I'm done. And I've got some political capital. I'm going to spend some of it. This is an important issue. I'll be the bad guy on this. And so here's what we did. one of the things that we did is I assigned a bunch of prosecutors to go and meet with all of the parents who were involved with this. But the other thing I did is initially, I sent out a letter on my letterhead. Now, one of the perks of being the chief elected law enforcement officer for a major city of this country is the job comes with this little accessory called a badge. And there is an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So on my letterhead, I sent out to every parent in the school system. And a friend of mine called me up and he was like, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She called all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, and said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Intended effect. But then, we also had these prosecutors that I assigned to go and meet with the principals when they were meeting with all these parents, hundreds of parents. And I told them, when you go over there, look really mean. And so, invariably, what we learned is we learned about cases, including the case where there was a woman who by herself was raising her 3 children, holding down 2 jobs, and homeless. She just needed some help. But by shining this infrared light of our public safety on the fact that her kids aren't in school, kids who maybe nobody expects much from, by doing that, we were able to figure out what was going on, get her access to services that exist. Of course, the attendance rate of her children improved. I dismissed the charges against her. And over the course of this initiative, we have improved attendance by 30%. This is not a statistic that is exclusive to San Francisco. And I would suggest to you, is one of, there are some seemingly small issues that actually are huge if we take issues that impact children in particular seriously. Because when I'm looking at these cases, I'm finding 6-year-olds who are missing 50, 60, 70 days of a 180-day school year. Now, you know that child will never be productive. So, there are a lot of issues that are at play. A lot of what I think about and talk about, and now at this stage of the campaign, I'm going to start doing all of the editorial board meetings with newspapers. They're starting to say, so contrast us with your opponent. And I think there are many points of contrast, but specifically I think it falls under the general point, which is that we cannot and should not be satisfied with status quo. There is a lot that is wonderful and beautiful about California. Look outside, right? Look in this room. There is so much that is great about our state. But there is a lot that is broken. And in many ways, we are facing a great crisis. But I also believe, as I think we all know, in times of crisis, there are also great opportunities. And I believe this is that time to receive support for the notion that we should not judge ourselves based on an adherence to tradition, but instead should judge ourselves based on a willingness to innovate, based on a willingness to infuse metrics into how we measure the success of what we have been doing. And this is a time where I think there will be, more than there has ever been, a comfort level with the idea that we're going to engage in innovation, even though there is some risk associated with that. Because we just cannot afford status quo. And I believe that my opponent in this race represents status quo, and that's not good enough for California. So it's going to be a rough and tumble race. I'll just get to the politics of it. 53 days from today. 53 days from today, we will make a decision about at least the next 8 years of California. At least. And we are neck and neck in the polling. We are neck and neck in fundraising. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out, folks. And so I'm here to thank you for your support and to nudge you to do a little bit more than that. And in particular, to not only support, but also be a soldier for the word that we need to get out about this campaign and the importance of the office. In this election cycle, everyone is very concerned about this $100 million candidate at the top of the ticket, and a lot of resources are going into that, rightly. But we can't let that be to the distraction of the second most important office on the ticket and the second line of defense in California. on very, very important issues. So I'm here to ask you for your help. I need you to be surrogates. I need you to help us raise money. I need you to help us turn out our vote. Let's get everyone excited. Someone was saying to me that, some of the mailers that are going out, it's been, the governor's race and then Barbara's race. And yes, we should be concerned and working on them. But let's not forget about everything else that's at play. So I'm here to ask for your help with that as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So are there any questions?